Oh man, I am finally catching up with the last bit of my summer purchases from my convention circuit, if you will. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at something that I absolutely adore, which is YMSF's Raimundo Figures, The Green Monster, aka Marvel's Godzilla. Now, for those of you who are young and might not know what the heck this guy is, let me educate you real quick. Back in the late 70s, after Toho decided to wrap things up with Godzilla, we in America weren't done. We still liked our monsters. We liked our Godzilla. And the good folks over at Marvel Comics decided to license Godzilla, giving him his first ever true American comic book adaptation. The Marvel Godzilla comic was one of the funnest comics ever written. It was written by Doug Moench and drawn by Herb Trimpe, who Doug Moench would go on to write a little thing called Nightfall, introducing Bane and the Azrael Batman, and a lot of other great stuff, but he cut his teeth doing Godzilla. Herb Trimpe had a hand in creating a little character called Wolverine, and drew some really awesome books like Shogun Warriors, and, batted his way around. So, as a kid, by the time I came around, there were only two offerings for comic books for Godzilla. And that was the very first Dark Horse imprint, which was this wonderful black and white gothic tale of retelling Godzilla's first attack on Japan. And then there was the Marvel Comics. Now, when I was a kid, the Marvel Comics were cheap, and my dad had a couple of buddies that had comic book stores, and they had plenty of back issues. So before I knew it, I had every single issue of that Marvel run, and to this day, as a 40-year-old man, I adore it to death. Why? Because they did the thing that a lot of other companies that license these characters didn't bother to do. They integrated Godzilla into the Marvel continuity. Godzilla's main story was he was being chased by S.H.I.E.L.D. He fought a variety of monsters like Yetagari, the Battle Beasts, Red Ronin, but that's not all. He clashed with some of Marvel's greatest superheroes. In issue 3, he took on the Champions with Hercules, Black Widow, Angel, and Iceman in San Francisco. He then fought the Fantastic Four when he got shrunk down by Pym particles. He went toe-to-toe with the Thing in one of the greatest panels I've ever seen drawn for comic books. He went back in time, and yes, they found a way for him to face off with Devil Dinosaur, one of my absolute favorite arcs in the entire run. And then to wrap up the whole line, well, what better way than for Godzilla to fight the Avengers? Yes, he took on the Avengers, legit took on the Avengers, and he won. So, I have fond love for the Marvel Godzilla. It kept my childhood going with my love of comic books and Godzilla. It, to this day, still remains, like I said, one of the absolute best adaptations. It's part of the reason why I adored the recent crossover of Godzilla and Kong with the Justice League, because they brought a lot of that vibe from that Marvel Comics run into the DC universe, just updated for modern readers. So, the thing is with that Marvel Comics run, it's stuck in a sticky rights limbo. Now, Marvel and Toho have managed to work something out, where in about a month from the release of this video, they are re-releasing the entire line in a omnibus hardback version, which I recommend everyone go out there and pick up if you've never read those comics. They are absolutely fantastic, especially in that beautiful era of the late 70s when Marvel got real pulpy. So, if you like the Avengers, if you like Fantastic Four, if you like Marvel in general, you cannot say no to Marvel Godzilla. Now, the problem with Marvel and Toho kind of doing their thing back in the day and it being licensed character meant that it is nigh impossible to get a proper figure representation of how Herb Trimpe drew Godzilla back in those books. It remain to me one of the most holy grails of figures yet to be produced. I put it up there with Art Adams' Godzilla, or that black and white book with that stylized Steve Rossetti style Godzilla from 1987. But now, we live in a day and age where small companies can produce their own figures, and the little guys at YMSF decided, you know what? We need some representation of Marvel's Green Giant, and thus we're going to make it for you. So while I was at G-Fest this past summer, YMSF did show up. They brought a lot of fun stuff. It was actually the line to get into. I actually had to wait a minute to get this guy, because YMSF, they're a small company. They get a small license to produce limited run figures. They are not cheap by any means, but for hardcore collectors, it is the only way to get better sculpts of what some of the stuff that Bandai either refuses to do or didn't exactly put their whole effort into. So this past spring, they revealed that they were doing what they called the Green Monster, which is none other than Marvel's Godzilla. And this was the only thing that I bought at G-Fest this year because it was the only thing I truly wanted. This has been something as a kid I have been waiting to have in my collection, and I am thrilled to have it. Like I said, I reviewed YMSF in the past. You can look at some of our videos. They did a version of Zilla from the animated series and a Trendmasters version. I also had some of their other ancillary figures, and they also did a Behemoth, which to this day is still the only way to get Behemoth in a 6-inch version. So I was more than happy to grab this because he ended up selling out. I did pay roughly $75 for him, but money well spent to have Marvel's interpretation of Godzilla adorning my collector shelves. Now, you might be looking at this and you're like, well, he's kind of chubby, a little ganky. Well, that's how he looked. In fact, here's a compare and contrast right there. You got to remember, back in the 70s, the artists weren't exactly worried about one-to-one representation. They just get it close enough. And, to a lot of people, Godzilla was a green monster, even though he wasn't. He's gray, black. Actually doesn't become green until Godzilla 2000. Little tidbit, nerdy tidbit for you there. But that is how Herb Trimpe drew him. He had 3 toes, with 4 fingers, the signature red eyes, which were a cornerstone of that Godzilla. You got to remember at the time that this was going on, Hanna-Barbera was producing their Godzilla cartoon where Godzilla shot lasers out of his eyes. I believe that's where they kind of took some of the inspiration. His spines were not colored in because, well, the printing process back in the day meant that would cost more money. So they just drew all of his spines in one color and pretty much essentially made him a solid color. But Herb Trimpe's art, the inking, the colors on it, gave him this beautiful 70s comic book texture that's something we have lost, and I kind of yearn for. I kind of miss that old style where everyone was kind of aping Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby, masters of their craft. And Herb was very good at what he did. So he did not draw the perfect Godzilla, but he drew a damn good Godzilla. Now, because YMSF is just kind of making a Godzilla-esque figure, they couldn't call this Marvel's Godzilla. So that's why it's called the Green Monster. They produce these in limited quantities. Here's the thing with YMSF. They sell exclusively through their Instagram page, so if you want to go give them a follow, I would say go give them a follow. I'll put their link in. I'll put their information in the show notes here. But they produced this guy and another colorway, which I believe was like a black and white version, but I gotta have the green guy. So much like everything with YMSF, he is beautifully sculpted down to the detail of the scales. He looks almost verbatim of what the comic book version did. He's a little chunkier. There were times that Herb Trimpe drew that Godzilla with a potbelly, and other times where he was more dinosauric. Again, consistency wasn't exactly the thing because these guys were on a deadline, and so they were just trying to crank these out as fast as they could. But beyond that, he is limited in his mobility. As you can see, pretty much 5 points of articulation. Tail does not move. The arms move. They are stiff. And part of that is because YMSF is pretty much a very small operation. So they do the moldings and castings on their own. And these are all hand painted by them. So you have to really take into consideration, like, okay, I got to snap these things together and I got to produce X amount. So you're not getting full articulation like some other independent toy vendors are making, but that is besides the point because the look is what is most important. The paint job on this is absolutely stunning. The eyes, the mouth, the teeth, everything is verbatim from the comic book, and that moreover for me is what I'm looking for. This is such weird deep cuts that there's a lot of people that probably love Godzilla who have probably never seen this and look at him like, this is weird and ugly, but no, to me he is beautiful. Look at him. Again, I yearn for more comic action figures based on Godzilla's many exploits over the years. I would kill for a proper Dark Horse Godzilla in both versions, in both the Steve Rossetti and the Art Adams style. But that's hopefully someone will get on that one day. But until then, I am very happy to have some representation of Godzilla's tenure during the Marvel Universe in plastic form, in vinyl, if you will, adorning my shelves. And I cannot sing the praises of this guy more so than I already have. I know you've probably been watching this video, I'm like, man, you talk a lot. Well, I love Marvel and I love Godzilla, and to have this finally in my collection in some form is a dream come true. Well, there you guys have it. That's my review of YMSF's The Green Monster, aka Marvel's Godzilla. Yeah, it was a little talky, but, well, it's a very basic figure, so I don't know what else to tell you. What I can tell you is that if you like this video, if you like any of our other videos, we do have a show. It's called The Kaiju Kingdom Podcast. You can find us at thekaijukingdompodcast.com. And if you don't like to download, you can always stream us on all of your favorite podcast streamers, including Apple, Spotify, or wherever else you might find better podcasts. We're also on social media. There it is. Check it out. If you ever want to get a hold of us, talk to us, comment, say, hey Chris, your videos kind of suck, or hey Chris, your videos are kind of awesome, that's the best way to do it. And on that note, I will wrap it up for this edition of the Koffers. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.